Okay, morning, guys. So we're going to do chapter 5, communication and documentation. This one's got quite a bit of information in it. You're going to hear more of me preaching than me actually teaching, I guess. I'm teaching, but I'm also going to kind of preach some stuff. So sorry about the lighting. Um, so let's get started here. This one looks a little different, where you see me looking kind of bouncing around. I've got a bunch of notes on here that I'm going to be kind of looking at to help me stay on track. Uh, so some of the things we're going to talk about is recording patient findings. You're going to hear a lot of preaching about that. The EMS system communication. So communication is needed. When we call for resources, we transfer care of a patient, or we interact with within the team structure. We do a lot of communicating that way. Therapeutic communication, principles of communicating with patients in a manner that achieves a positive relationship, and interview techniques. And then some basic medical terminology that, yes, you need to know. I'm the world's worst because I am terrible with terminology. So there's a few in here. When we get there, we'll talk about a little bit and why it's important to know those important ones. So the introduction, communications are important during every phase of a call, and that's so true. From the time that the tones go off, or you get your page on your phone, or however your department does it, communication starts right then and there, from the caller to dispatch, from dispatch to us or EMRs, and then from EMRs on to responding EMS units, all the way up to the hospital. It's constant communication. I said a couple chapters ago that we're going to really push, or I am, and I think my co-instructor will as well in class, that we verbalize every move you make from here on out. We're going to verbalize it. So dispatch must communicate location and type of call. With that being said, I just want to throw out there real quick that your dispatchers can only communicate what they are given from the caller. And remember, those callers are sometimes in a panic. Those callers are sometimes having the worst day of their life. And so if you get bad information, or not always correct information, it's not your dispatchers. They're doing what they're supposed to. EMRs need to communicate with patients, bystanders, family members, dispatchers, and other members of public safety community. So there's going to be times throughout your EMS career where you have a patient plus you have a family member, or you have patient and you have neighbors. You have got to have good communication skills and be able to think quick on your feet, which we'll get into a little bit later, the importance of knowing your stuff. Once you've completed a call, it's important to document. Now, EMRs do not necessarily have to do patient care reports, but we are going to talk to them about them, because you might help us after that call. You might help your partner. You might help do documentation. So we are going to go into it and the importance. So we're going to get started now that I've rambled for 5 minutes. So the communication system is used to communicate when you can't do face to face. So the communication system is going to be using the radio. It's going to be using the Bluetooth ability to send EKGs to the hospital before we get there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of communication. So result of communication system will be only as accurate as the information that is put into the system. This, once again, starts with the caller. Whoever calls 911, it starts with them. They tell dispatch something, dispatch has to tell us, or PD, or fire department, whatever. So, and then the information that we give to whoever shows up on scene, whoever's coming to scene, it's only as good as what we make it. You have to have a basic idea of how your department communication system works. I don't personally use a lot of 10 codes. Our department really doesn't. We use a couple. Most of the time, it's pretty clear and open communication. Um, so the systems can be divided into two categories here. So those that transmit voice communication and those that transmit data. So we've got our cell phones, we've got our radios, um, and then we've got the ability to transmit data to hospitals or to receiving facilities. The voice system, so voice communication system, spoken words from one location to another. The radio systems, you must understand the basics of a radio communication system and know how to properly operate the radio system used by your department. Uh, if you've ever used a little walkie-talkie when you was a kid, or they're pretty simple. I know that there's different brands out there. Usually it's pretty simple. You key up, there's a button on the side, you hold it for a couple seconds, and then you say what you need to say, you release it, and you wait for a response. And we're going to talk a little bit about like some closed loop communication and what that means. So radio communications are regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. Frequencies, channels are assigned according to the function of the organization. So like in my department, we have the EMS fire channel. I can switch channels and I can be on PD. I can switch channels and be on one of the local EMS channels. Each department or each section has its own frequency. It's no different than like the AM FM radios. Each station has its own channel or frequency. Our radios are the exact same. So the different types here, you got base station. So that's a powerful stationary two-way radio that's located and in a fixed place and attached to one or more fixed antennas. Ours here at the station, ours is set up on a shelf. It's fixed in, it's connected to an antenna. We have a loudspeaker in the bay. So if we're not in the office, we can still hear it. It stays where it's at. It's a base station radio. Then you've got your mobile radios, a device that is mounted in a vehicle and draws electricity from the electrical system of that vehicle. So your fire trucks, your police cars, your ambulances, we have fixed radios in those units that we use while we are in the unit. And then we have our portable radio. That's our handhelds, self-contained unit that includes a two-way radio with a battery. It's built-in microphone and built-in antenna. I don't have mine on me, but it's a handheld radio. And then we've got a repeater. A repeater is just a device that receives a weak radio signal. It strengthens it, and then it automatically rebroadcasts it. So if you have a big service area, you'll have multiple repeaters that signal can get strengthened and continue on. The telephone system primary is in voice communication. We all know what a phone does. You've got a landline, which is either above ground or underground hardwired system. You've got your mobile phones, which we all have, relies on a radio wave between a mobile phone and a tower. If we're away from the tower or we're down at the bottom, sometimes we don't have signal. And then you got the smartphones that use advanced operating systems that combine a feature of cellular phone with those of a personal computer. And we can use our GPS, which we'll talk about GPS here in a second. Communication systems. So this is the data system. Communication systems are increasingly used to send and receive data. Data can be transmitted through radio, phone, or internet. The paging systems can be transmitted text message or voice communication. Some are both. The one I personally use, it's just a text message through a special app that gives me all the information when responding. I can also, when I get that, it's called an active. I can hit a button up there on the top and it will actually give me a map of where the calls, where I'm responding to. So I live in a small town. I know most of the streets, but I still use that GPS every call. just to ensure the quickest route. Mobile data terminals, or MDTs, transmit data messages through a radio system and are frequently incorporated into a mobile radio system. Fax machines use phone lines and radio systems to send written data. Telemetry is used in advanced life support. So we send ECGs or EKGs, 12 leads, whatever you want to call them. So we can do a 12 lead in the truck, hit a button, and we can transmit that information directly to medical control, directly to the hospital that we're headed into. So they have that 12 lead before we ever arrive. Digital messaging is a technology that includes email, text messages, or social media, which are increasingly used by EMRs to send and receive information within public safety agencies. I haven't said it yet. You guys should know by now, though. Go ahead and read that chapter. Go ahead and take some notes on the definitions. I'm not going to tell you stuff isn't important because it is. You need to know it, but at the same time, some of it's kind of common sense. The function of the radio communication systems are used for different functions. So some of the things we use these for. Calls for medical assistance can be broken down into 6 phases: dispatch, response to the scene, arrival at the scene, updating responding EMS units, and transferring of care of patient to another personnel. Post-run activities. Dispatch may use voice text messaging or MDT to alert responders of an emergency. It's your responsibility to keep your equipment ready and receive all calls when you're on duty. So, and if you're not sure if the information is correct or if there's enough, get on there and ask dispatch to give more information, or ask dispatch to repeat if you're not sure about something. I can't push that enough. That your dispatchers are doing the best they can, communicate with them, not against them. And we're going to get into all this here in a little bit. We're going to break it down. So, response to the scene, you need to know your response area. This goes back to knowing your streets. Use that GPS. We have technology now. You can jump in the truck and either you're going to Bluetooth to your truck, or you plug it in where your truck has navigation already. Use that GPS. Dispatchers may give you further information about the location of your call or the condition of your patient while you're en route to the scene via radio. Okay. That mobile radio, they're going to use it. It's nothing new for you to head out and dispatch come over and be like, hey, Unit 17, we have a correction on location, or Unit 17, you're going to intercept with blah, 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 blah. Things change and they will notify you. It is also your responsibility to notify dispatch and anybody responding with you of any danger or changes that you notice. If you're going to be delayed for some reason around here, we have trains that sometimes block the highway. We need to notify dispatch, hey, we're held up, we're stopped behind a train. Any problem, we need to notify them. Let's see. Arrive at the scene, perform a visual survey of the scene when you arrive, give the communication center a brief verbal description of the scene. Sorry, it's like 5 of them. I gotta have my coffee. Your report should verify location of the incident, type of incident, any hazard present, number of patients, any additional assistance required. So as we start to learn how to do our assessments, so that needs to start the second tone drop. We need to be pre-planning. We need to be looking at our protocol, planning the best route. And so when we arrive, we want to make sure that scene, it says primary visual. So we want to make sure that scene is safe for us to even get out of that truck. Um, if we come across something that's dangerous, if there's smoke blowing across the highway, if there's a massive car wreck, if roads are slick, if it's a muddy road, any hazard, electrical lines are down, we need to notify dispatch, because if say fire's responding behind us to come help us, or a PD is responding, they need to know what they're coming into. They are going to do the same thing for us. So use that radio. Update responding EMS units. You'll be expected to update responding EMS units about the condition of your patient. So when we get there, or you guys get there as EMR, if you're not on a truck and you just respond as an EMR, some of the stuff we need to know is age and sex of the patient. We have a 27-year-old now. The chief complaint, he's complaining that his stomach hurts, level of responsiveness. So we're going to learn this when we start doing more of our assessments, but he's alert and oriented times 4, or he's only moaning when I sternum moving. Those are the kind of things we need to know. Status of the airway, breathing, and circulation. So are they breathing on their own? Is their airway open? And do we have a good pulse? Are they cool and clammy? Just tell us what you see, what you find. Transfer of patient care to EMS personnel when EMTs or paramedics arrive on the scene is important for you to provide them with a handoff report. This is super simple. What did you find? What did you do? How did they react? If you can remember those things, you're going to be all right. So what was listed there, we just talked about, we kind of need to know that, but like I said, how did you find them? What did you do to help them, and how did they react to it? That goes along with helping us when we arrive, or before we arrive. Since we're talking about communication, you can use the radio and tell us before we even get there. The easiest way to report your patient assessment results is to use the same systematic approach that you followed during patient assessment, which I know we haven't learned patient assessment yet as of right now. Once we learn the patient assessment, this will all make more sense, I promise. So provide the age and the sex, describe the history of the incident, describe the patient's chief complaint, and the patient's level of consciousness or responsiveness. Describe how you found the patient. We've just talked about that. We're going to repeat that several times through this. Report the status of the patient's vital signs, airway, breathing, and circulation. I cannot stress this enough. As we learn how to do vital signs, the importance of those vital signs, especially at EMR, EMT level, that kind of draws a line. That's where we start. That's our biggest picture to work with. It's called your baseline set of vitals, and that's going to tell us if our interventions or what we do to help them is actually helping, or if it's not helping. So critical to get those vitals and make sure that our airway stays open, they're breathing, and that we have good circulation. So describe the results of the physical examination. What did we find when we actually got down at their level and we started our assessment? What are we finding? You need to report that to us. Report any pertinent medical condition using sample. I'm not getting into this. As we learn our assessments here in a couple of weeks, you will learn what sample is. If you're following my YouTube channel, there is a special video on nothing but sample history. Hop on there and check it out. Report the interventions provided and patient response to them. We talked about that. What did you do? How did they respond? Use the same systematic approach you follow during patient assessment. We talked about that. Online medical control is generally used for EMTs and paramedics too. Secure permission to perform certain skills, get direction regarding the patient care, give patient care reports to the hospital. If your EMS system uses online medical control for EMRs, you'll need to learn how and when to contact medical control. I don't want to get down a rabbit hole here, but if you're with a service, most of the time you will have your protocols, which are standing orders, which if you remember a couple videos ago, means that you you have been signed off to do certain skills without having online permission. So if you'll remember, online means we're on the phone or we're on the radio with a physician or our medical director. If you have standing protocols, you follow your protocols, you don't go above them, and you're good. We're going to learn more about that as this class goes forward. Post-run activities. After you've turned over care of the patient to another EMS provider, you need to report your status to your communication center. All that's saying is if you're on scene, I show up, you turn over care of that patient, you need to let dispatch know that, hey, you have given over care and that you're done, or that you're going with EMS or whatever. Let communication center know how long it will take you to get back, get your unit back ready for service. So if you're in a unit, yeah, it depends on where you work, I guess. Sometimes it might take 10 minutes to get that ambulance cleaned and your equipment cleaned um, and get back in service. And sometimes if it's a bad call, it can be an hour. It depends on the call. Never go back in service until your unit is restocked and everything has been decontaminated and cleaned. Providing a written report of a call is covered under the section of documentation. Sorry. Providing a written report of a call is covered under a section of, oh, I already read that. I checked my phone when I shouldn't. So function of radio communication. I'm not going to read all this. Pretty much it's telling you how to use the radio. Let's see, verbal communication. Effective communication means that the person receiving the message understands exactly what the person who sent the message meant. Effective communication requires feedback. Receiver needs to communicate to sender that message has been received and understood. So this is where I was talking about that closed loop communication. Dispatch comes over, unit 17, update, patient is now awake and alert. So I'm going to pick up my mic and I'm going to key up. I'm going to wait 2 seconds. I'm going to be like, okay, unit 17, copy, patient is now awake and alert. I'm going to repeat it back to them so that they know I heard them and I heard them correctly. I'm closing that loop of communication. Both external and internal distractions can negatively affect communication. So distractions, so noise and other things, electronic devices. I'm going to really stick with the noise one, especially on these big instances where we have multiple agencies there. There's sirens going off. There's people yelling or screaming. You've got 10 people in a room and you're trying to work a code on a family member. Sometimes it can be loud and distracting. Internal distractions, such as letting yourself think about personal matters while you're on the scene, can negatively affect your ability to communicate. So this is something we're going to work on in class. I can't really teach this. I can just give you pointers. You got to learn to control this up here. It's not your emergency. You're going to hear me say that a lot. You cannot make things personal while you're on a call. If it's worst case scenario, it's a family member, a friend or something, we can break down after we do our job. We are professionals. We are trained to do this. So we do our job and then we can have our personal time after the call is over. Because if you let it distract you, you can give bad information, you can make bad decisions. It's a whole nother thing we can talk about later. Communication can also be affected when an EMR lacks empathy for a patient or shows prejudiced against a certain type of group or person. I'm going to lead back to that one here in a second. Verbal communication with the patient, the family, and the rest of the healthcare team are essential parts of high quality patient care. You must be able to determine what the patient needs and then explain this information to others. So let's loop back up here to number, oh, sorry, yours isn't numbered. I'm looking at my notes. I apologize. So when it talks about lack of empathy or you are judging people based off whether it's race, color, religion, any of that. We don't do that. If you're in this career field, we can't do that. Um, every single patient should be treated like it's your mother, if it's your grandmother, if it's, your one of your closest family members, every single patient. I don't care if it's the homeless guy, if it's the town drug dealer, I don't care. Everybody gets the same treatment, and that should be 110% your very best every single call. Um, I'm going to leave it at that. Everybody's got their own view. That is mine. Um, verbal communication with family and healthcare professionals. So, guys, in this line of work, I'm going to preach for a minute. We don't do all this homework. We don't do these slideshows and read our chapters and take our test so we can pass the class. We do all that because when it comes down to that moment where you need to know your stuff, that's why we do it. Yes, mistakes can be made. It's going to happen. I've made mistakes on calls. I'm not perfect, but what I tell my students, and I will preach this forever, is it's never a failure if you learn from it. As long as we learn from it and we move forward and we get better every time we make a mistake, you never fail. So it's very important that we understand our job, our protocols, our skills. We understand exactly, I gotta think how I word this. We need to know our stuff so that when we communicate with those family members or we communicate with that other healthcare team, we don't doubt it. We know what we're saying. We are confident. And that's a huge part of patient care, is being able to communicate with the patient, the family, or other healthcare providers. Knowing your stuff when it comes down to that split second, needing to do the right thing is huge. So don't read your chapter. Don't take your test and quiz it just to pass this class. We're doing this to save lives and to help people. So be the best you can be every single day. Work to be the best. Once again, that was my personal opinion, but you must be able to determine what the patient needs. This goes right back to you put in the hard work, you become the best. And I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm saying I work every day to be the best. There are still people 10 times smarter than me. I know that. But every day when I come to work, I do my best to learn something. I do my best to be the person that that patient needs at that moment. And that's what I need you guys to do. Guidelines for effective communication with patients. So your gestures, body movement, and attitude towards the patient are critical, important in gaining and trusting of both the patient and the family. Yeah. RBF. If you know what that means, I'm not going to say it, but that's a real thing. You can be the most caring, loving person in the world, but if you have that I hate the world face, you're not going to connect people like you need to. In this field, we need to be able to control our facial gestures. We need to be able to control our tempers and attitude. Don't be kicking and pushing and throwing stuff on scene when things aren't going right. We don't want to be like jerky and quick movements. We need, sometimes there's patients that push us to our limit. We got to keep that positive attitude and know that we're there to help them. Let's see, the following guidelines communication will help you calm and reassure your patient. So introduce yourself by name. Hey, I'm Evan. I'm an advanced EMT with blah, 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 blah. What would you like me to refer to you by? What's your name? Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. So, nope, not going to go. Sorry. I was going to go down a different road, but I'm not going to. Find out what they would like to be called or referred to by. Make eye contact. That's huge. So we need to get on their level, and it talks about it here in a little bit. So we need, if they're in a chair, we need to get down on one knee. We're not above them. We never hover. We never just hover over them. Get down to their level. You need to master that soft, caring voice. Um, use language the patient understands, speak slowly and clearly. We don't use medical terminology with patients. Uh, we we talk to them just like they're our best friend, or like I said earlier, if they're a family member. Um, be sure that you are telling them your name and title. That's pretty. Tell the truth. This is a sticky one. Won't go in deep detail, but we need to be honest with them. We don't want to give false hope or lie to a patient. That immediately loses their respect. If we lose their respect and trust, then we've lost everything we worked so hard for. Allow time for the patient to respond. Listening goes a long ways. Sometimes they just need someone to listen to them. Limit the number of people talking with. You're going to get on calls where you're talking to the patient and the mom and the grandma and the dad and the cousin and the uncle. They're all trying to answer the questions for the patient. If the patient's able to answer those questions, you need to, hey, I need this patient to answer my questions. Please allow them to. You need to handle that. We don't want 15 people talking to the patient at once. We don't want 15 people talking for the patient at once. Be aware of your body language. We kind of talked about that. We don't want to show attitude or anger. Act and speak in a calm, confident manner. This goes back to being, putting in the time, knowing your stuff. If you know your stuff and you're not questioning yourself and you're not just making up BS, you can have that confidence. You can stay calm because you know what you're doing. Respect culture norms. Patients use open-end questions and closed-end questions. Treat all patients as if they were members of your family. I already preached that. Communicating with patient with special needs, communicating with patients with who are hearing impaired. It's all about reading the room. Your first few calls, like in clinicals, you're going to be nervous. You're going to learn how to read those rooms. Ask questions. Use family members if they're there. A patient of any age may be able to hear you or may not be able to hear you for many reasons. Sorry, I can't talk. I'm going to tell you straight up. My coworkers would tell you, I'm hard of hearing. I'm 41 years old and I can't hear out of my right ear. So it can happen at any age. That doesn't mean I need screamed at. That doesn't mean the patient needs yelled at. We need to make that eye contact. We need to speak clearly, and not, I don't want to say you sit there and talk to them really slow, but we need to talk to where they can read our lips. We all carry notepads. Write questions down if you need to. Let them read them out loud. And once again, use, sorry, that was my alarm, time to get out of bed. Use family members. They know how to communicate. If they're there and available, use them. Let's see. We talked about that. If all fails, write down your questions. Some people are deaf and blind. Take your time, be patient, and use touch as well as a way to communicate. I'm just going to keep preaching this. If someone's available who is used to this person, let them help you. Reading my notes. Communicating with patients who are visually impaired. Look for signs that suggest the patient may be visually impaired. Tell the patient what is happening. Identify noises, which is going to go into another kind of spill. We want to explain everything we do. You're going to hear me throughout these courses tell you to verbalize everything when we do our skills. We verbalize every single move we make, and we don't change that when we got to the field. One, it earns that patient's trust. It relaxes patients, and it gives you that sense of confidence. If you're telling the patient step by step what you're doing, then you're also working through what you've learned. And as you learn your skills, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, I mean, from the get-go, we start out, hey, I'm going to go ahead and put this blood pressure cuff on you. It's going to squeeze your arm. I'm going to put this little thing on your finger. That's going to tell me what your oxygen is. We walk them through every step, and it's also helping us to stay on track and follow our protocols. It's good to learn that patient's name and use it throughout your examination and treatment. That once again gives them relaxation and they trust you. Something that it talks about here is if they have a service dog, if there's any way we can keep that dog with them, let's go ahead and do that. Visual impairments and hearing impairments are not related. It's not necessary to talk louder to a visually impaired patient. So just because they're blind doesn't mean they're deaf. So don't be yelling at people that can't see. Communication with non-English speaking patients. So let's try to find a translator. And we have that Google Translate. Call resources. Well, that's one of them deals. Do I need further resources? Maybe that's something that we can call our local hospital or our local dispatch and be like, I need a translator. They have a list of people that they can call to come help you. Or if you're bilingual, that is awesome. As you guys have noticed, I can't speak English half the time, so I sure can't speak any other language. When dealing with older patients who suffer from hearing and visual impaired, use the same communication skills you would with any other patient in similar conditions. Do not assume that all older patients have physical or mental impairments. Assess all patients carefully and give them time to respond to your questions. Just because someone's old doesn't mean they're deaf or they're blind. I know people a lot older than me that can run circles around me. So assess all patients carefully. And give them time to answer your questions. Don't rush them. If it's a life-threatening condition, yeah, we can speed things up. But as far as that goes, most of the time, ask a question, make sure they understand the question, and that you get an appropriate response. If for some reason there's not an appropriate response, let's re-ask that question or even reword it. Sometimes we get in this, we get this sense of it's second nature to us, and we forget it's not second nature to someone else. So we might have to reword a question so it's easier to understand what we're looking at. Pediatric patients. So this is a whole nother monster in itself. Children are a very stressful situation for any EMS provider, whether it's fire, police, or us ambulance personnel. Children and their parents or caregivers are often frightened and anxious. Familiar objects and faces can help keep a kid calm. Sometimes we have to have mom or dad hold that child while we're helping them. This is one of them. If it's not life-threatening, we need to slow way down. We need to let them use our stethoscope. We need to let them, I've taken mom and dad's vitals so that the kid can see that it doesn't hurt before I take the kid's vitals. I can't, your book doesn't say this. Personally, I use my cell phone and I let kids watch Disney on my phone. That's a huge one for me. We keep stuffed animals in our truck. A simple glove balloon in the back of the truck goes a long ways. Tell the kid your first name. So when we're communicating with them, 2, 3 years old or older, we want to talk to the child, but we want to catch mom and dad's eye. We want to make sure they're listening to us. but we want to give that child the sense that we are their friend. We are not there to be mean to them. We are trying to earn their trust, so that we can help them. Squat or kneel, set at a child's level and establish eye contact. Don't just go in there, quick and excited. We want to slow things down. We want to make that eye contact. We want to earn their trust. And mom and dad also. Let's see. Communicating with a patient with a developmental disability, ask the family or caregiver about the patient's typical level of communication. So we do continuing education. I'm going to tell you right now, um, if you are in a community that you have several autistic or Down syndrome children, I'm going to use those two because those are kind of the big ones. Get online, take some extra classes, get on YouTube. You can learn a lot. We want to speak slowly and we want to use short sentences and simple words. Once again, we're not going to talk over their heads. We want to make sure they understand us. You might have to repeat things and reword things until they understand it. Once again, this can be a grown adult with a learning disability of some kind. And the caregiver might have to stay with you. It can be a grown person that still needs that caregiver with them. And a lot of them, we can use the same approach that we do for the children. It can be a child with a disability or an adult with a disability. We get up on their level, we talk calmly, quietly, and slowly, and we communicate with them and that caregiver. Disruptive behavior. So this one, if they're a threat to themselves or you, we immediately get law enforcement involved. We never want to go in and get ourselves stuck. We want to stay between the exit and the patient, not don't get in there and get to where you can get pinned. We want to protect that patient, but we protect ourselves, our partners, then our patient. Don't take your eyes off these people and don't turn your back. This disruptive behavior, you never know what's going on with them and what they might do. And this can happen to anybody. So just be wary. If the patient has a weapon, like I said, we need to clear and get law enforcement involved. If for some reason we get into a scene and then there's a weapon and we're kind of stuck, which we don't need to be, do your best to try to calm that patient and talk them down. This goes back to we treat everybody like a family member. If you show respect, most of the time we can earn their respect. As soon as your personal safety is assured, provide the appropriate emergency medical care. Sometimes family members or friends of this disruptive patient. Do what? So we can use these family members, these friends or whatever, to help us convince this person they need help or get them to the hospital. But if they are able to answer their questions appropriately, then we can't just kidnap them and make them go to the hospital. So what that means is, what town are you in right now? What year is it? How many quarters are in a dollar? Stuff like that. If they can answer them questions appropriately, then they're in their right mind and they have a right to refuse. So just keep that in mind. We talked about that a couple chapters ago, I think. Terminology. Like I said, there's a few things on here that you just need to know. We're going to kind of identify body parts anatomically. specific illnesses or injuries or indicate treatments given. Medical terminology is intended to clarify language. For those of us who know it, like I said earlier, I'm not big on it. There are some that we have to know. And there's a list coming up here in a minute that you guys can screenshot, learn them. It's in your book. So your job as an EMR is to communicate your message to other medical providers clearly as possible. Do not use medical terminology if you're unsure of it. Let's talk plainly. As new terminology is introduced, look at parts of the word, which we're going to kind of learn, the prefixes and suffixes of it, and the word root, and it's how these words are built, and how you can break them apart and understand them. So here's that list. It's in your book. Brady means slow. I personally come up with little tricks to learn these. So I think of Tom Brady because I'm not a fan, and he's slow. So Brady means slow. Tacky means fast. Therm is like thermometer, so it's temperature related. Hyper is high, so high energy, hyper. That's how I remember that. Hypo is low. Naso is going to be nose. Oro is mouth. You can read through it. Cardio is hard. Hema or hemo is blood. Neuro. These are the ones that you need to know. And not even you need to know these. Go ahead and make a screenshot on your phone. Look at them once or twice a day. You're going to see Brady and Tacky a lot. You're going to see hyper and hypo a lot. Cardio a lot. Hemo quite a bit. You're going to see these words throughout class and through the skills that we do. We're going to use this terminology when we give you examples and stuff. So just get used to those. Your documentation. As an EMR, you don't do a lot of documentation. EMTs and higher do your patient care reports, but it's good to learn how to do it because we might need your help. Or if you're going from EMR to EMT and you get hired as an EMR at an agency, we might actually have you start doing reports and we'll help you, we'll walk you through it. That way, when you get your EMT, you already know how to do it. I'm not going to sit here and read all this stuff because it's stuff we need to do in person. Your documentation, it can take anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the call and what kind of documentation we have to do on that particular report. But it's got information that we're going to have to put in that report. It's like your chief complaints, the level of responsiveness, the status, those vital signs, any interventions we do, how they related to it, the sample history, which I told you we'll get into later, or you can get on Redneck Medic is my YouTube channel. Get on there, and there's a special history taking that I break down the sample history and OPQRST history. We're gonna have to know what time we were dispatched, we arrived, who was there, when we took them to the hospital, when we arrived at the hospital. So complete your patient report as soon as possible. So your PCR or patient care report in my department, we have either to the end of your shift or 24 hours to complete that. It has to be completed. We fax it to the receiving facility and we submit it to the state. So I'm going to jump down here to reportable stuff. So we have to make special documentation and report these things. Knife wounds, gunshots, motor vehicle collision, suspected child abuse, domestic violence, elder abuse, dog bites, rape, and there's more. If you have any question whether it needs reported, I highly recommend you get a hold of your director and you ask them for their opinion. You can also call your medical director. I go through my director all the time. I'm sure I drive her nuts sometimes. You are going to, if you do this for a living, especially full-time, there are going to be times when you do have to report things. and your director or someone can walk you through your agency's procedures. So the summary, this is just kind of going over what we all talked about. I'm not gonna waste any more time. This is already almost an hour or so. Guys, that's chapter 5 in a nutshell. Please get on my YouTube channel, watch those videos, send me messages on there. If you want me to break something down and make a specialized video for you, I'm happy to do that. This is stuff that we need to know. I know that chapters 1 through 5 have been really boring. The next one will be more exciting. It's the human body, or the body. That's chapter 6, and I will see you. So thanks for sticking it out with me.